Before we dive into the main topic, please take a moment to subscribe, turn on the notification bell, like this podcast, and leave a comment to support the channel. Your engagement truly helps. Welcome to the debate. Our focus today stems from a really unique structural tension we found within a piece of educational material. Specifically, it's a script that's designed to help users move from, let's say, a basic awareness to a more intermediate understanding of the psychological effects of social media.
And that is exactly where the conflict lies, isn't it? We have this really well-crafted content that diagnoses the negative effects of the digital reward cycle, the compulsive checking, the comparison, the anxiety. But the script itself, in order to be seen, actually mandates that the audience engage in those very behaviors: subscribe, like, comment.
So the central question for us today is this. Does the practical necessity of using these calls to action, these platform mechanics, to make sure that good, critical content reaches its audience, does that necessity justify reinforcing the very cycle it's critiquing? I'm going to argue that yes, this is an unavoidable and frankly justified cost of distribution.
And I'll be arguing that embedding these actions creates a deep and counterproductive paradox. It fundamentally damages the conceptual integrity of the educational message itself by reinforcing the exact attention culture the material warns us against.
I can see why you'd think that, and I absolutely acknowledge the tension is sharp. But we have to be practical here. The entire goal of this script is to lift users from what we might call an A1 or A2 level of comprehension all the way up to B1.
Okay, could you just clarify that distinction, the A1 to B1 jump, for our listeners?
Certainly. So moving from A1, A2 is about going from a simple recognition, something like, okay, social media sometimes makes me feel anxious, to a B1 level, which is about achieving a more mature, cognitive understanding. It means you actively get the precise psychological mechanisms at play. The dopamine hits, what drives FOMO, and then you start developing these advanced strategies for creating what the script calls healthy digital habits.
And that's a laudable goal, of course.
And achieving it depends entirely on visibility. We're trying to get this critical knowledge, strategies for managing comparison, techniques for reducing anxiety, out to literally millions of users. And in today's algorithmic world, if this content doesn't generate that immediate engagement, likes, subscriptions, comments, it basically suffers from digital obscurity. It just sinks, and it never reaches the people who need that B1 level knowledge the most. These CTAs are a necessary tool to meet the student where they are.
I'm sorry, but I just can't accept that the operational need overrides what is, to me, an ethical failure of pedagogical consistency. You're admitting that the delivery mechanism relies on the very addictive behaviors the script is supposed to dismantle. The content itself details how waiting for likes creates, and I'm quoting here, stress, excitement, and insecurity, and how constant notifications directly increase anxiety.
But I see the CTAs as a transparent, almost transactional exchange. They are leveraging the platform's rules to ensure the vital discussion on mental health, the strategies for taking control, is actually seen. The benefit of educating users about doom scrolling and how to develop a critical eye, that benefit far outweighs the minor intentional reinforcement of the engagement mechanisms needed for delivery. We're actually modeling strategic engagement.
But the listener is being told in their very first interaction with this material to perform the exact emotionally addictive behavior that is later diagnosed as a pathology. That creates a massive disconnect between the channel's critical message and its operational reality. I mean, if the framework forces the student to participate in the sickness to access the cure, the credibility of that cure is just fundamentally compromised.
Okay, let's move from the overall framework to the mechanics themselves, specifically the request to like and comment. You see this as a pure demand for validation.
Absolutely. The source material is incredibly clear on this. The quest for likes and shares is defined as seeking a social score, using social media for purely external validation instead of genuine sharing. How can we possibly teach an audience to replace toxic comparison with gratitude, to move beyond worrying about popularity, while at the same time demanding a social score, a like, for our own existence? It's hypocrisy built right into the foundation.
That framework of pedagogical consistency is compelling. And I agree, the like mechanic is the most problematic part. But let's look closer at the function of comments, which you're lumping in there as just validation seeking. I think we shouldn't reduce the act of commenting solely to score seeking.
Why not?
Because the source material also notes that social media can be used for learning new things and for finding support. So when we ask listeners to comment, we are, in a sense, fostering a B1 level discourse. We're encouraging them to move past just passive consumption into active intellectual engagement, to discuss the ideas, ask complex questions. A comment, in this specific educational context, is a tool for interactive learning, which is essential for moving beyond that simple A1 recognition. Here, I think the intention really does matter more than the mechanic.
I have to challenge that idea that intention justifies the mechanic. I mean, intention is completely irrelevant to the reward center of the brain. Whether the comment is a profound intellectual query or a simple "great job," the act of posting and then waiting for reply activates the exact same neurological reward cycle, a cycle the material defines by stress, excitement, and insecurity. The content tells us to disconnect our personal worth from online validation, yet the channel's very structure trains the listener to associate this critical lesson with the dopamine hit of approval. We're inadvertently teaching them that even intellectual independence is, well, dependent on the approval system.
But that's a very reductive view of the exchange, I think. We are providing a controlled environment, the educational value of that sustained engagement, the discussion on developing a healthy digital identity, that has to be prioritized. If we get rid of comments, we lose all the qualitative feedback we need to refine the curriculum and address specific anxieties the audience has. It just becomes a one-way lecture, which is, far less effective pedagogically.
I understand the need for interaction, but if the content is truly about promoting autonomy, then that interaction should be organic, not mandated as a form of channel support. If the content is strong, engagement will follow naturally without this kind of structural coercion.
That brings us right to the more invasive instruction, the request to turn on the notification bell. You see this as inherently detrimental.
It is structurally detrimental. The source clearly states that notifications cause compulsive checking and increase anxiety, forcing the individual to feel this constant pressure to respond. So why on earth would an educational channel dedicated to mental health encourage using stress-inducing triggers, especially when a core B1 concept is teaching users to set healthy boundaries and protect their own emotional space?
I come at it from a strategic intervention perspective. While the source warns that doom scrolling is a harmful habit, it also champions the positive uses of these platforms. Learning something new, finding real motivation. So notifications, in this specific curated context, ensure that when a new, high-quality B1 level segment is released, the audience gets it immediately.
And why is that immediacy so critical that it justifies the anxiety it causes?
Because it acts as an intervention against the negative habits. If the audience just passively waits to encounter this content, they are far more likely to revert to late-night scrolling or doom scrolling, which is precisely when they're tired and most susceptible to negative content. The notification is a deliberate, strategic countermeasure. It directs the user to positive stress-reducing content when it's available, preventing them from falling into those addictive loops. It's a mechanism of selective digital urgency.
That's a compelling argument for the channel's survival, but you're ignoring the structural pressure you're putting on the learner. You're replacing one source of anxiety, missing out, with another, the obligation to engage with the notification. The individual is still tethered to the platform's mechanism. We should be teaching people to choose their content intentionally on their own time, promoting autonomy, not dependence on a notification chime. The B1 goal is cognitive freedom, not just redirecting their attention dependence.
But freedom requires accessible tools. If we look at the source material's focus on curating your feed, we are simply advising users to strategically curate the notification bell to include this specific content, treating the bell as a delivery tool for a positive outcome, not an alert system for social obligations.
Let's pivot to the larger conceptual issue here, which is authenticity and identity.
This is really core to the B1 discussion.
Agreed.
Okay, so the script heavily emphasizes the need for authenticity and addressing the disconnect between real life and online life. However, the compulsory CTA framework promotes a hyper-aware, performance-driven approach from the listener. They're told to perform an action like subscribe solely for the benefit of the channel's metrics. This mirrors the exact pressure users feel to record everything or think about how others will see them, which, as the material warns, actually reduces real-life enjoyment. The channel itself is asking the audience to perform a role for its own survival.
I think you're conflating mandatory support actions for a shared positive educational project with personal self-esteem issues. The audience isn't liking this content to feel validated as individuals. They're executing a platform mechanic to ensure a high-value educational message spreads. We're just being transparent about the required labor of modern content consumption.
But transparency doesn't solve the paradox. For the audience striving to achieve that B1 critical literacy, they're learning a really troubling lesson: that even the material designed to liberate them from metrics is itself fundamentally dependent on those same metrics. The channel, in this framework, it lacks authenticity because it's prioritizing survival over consistent messaging.
Well, that's a harsh assessment. We are teaching the audience to be selective with what we consume and to curate your feed. They are being highly selective in supporting this content because they recognize its value in reducing their anxiety. This is a positive use of the platform with clear intention, which is distinct from the negative behaviors we diagnose, like posting for approval. The channel is a tool, and we are modeling how to strategically use that imperfect tool to achieve a positive outcome, that B1 level of critical literacy.
Modeling compliance with the reward system seems like a very strange way to teach resistance to it. We have to prioritize conceptual purity. True independence from that cycle requires pedagogical frameworks that don't need to participate in it to survive.
The complexity of modern learning delivery, it just necessitates using the tools of the platform, even those that carry psychological risks. We have to reach the millions who are actively scrolling right now. The ability to diffuse advanced strategies for taking control justifies the unavoidable structural demands of modern content delivery. We have to meet the student where they are, in the digital environment, even if that environment is inherently flawed.
And I maintain that while the content is crucial for the B1 level audience, its mandated delivery method undermines its own credibility by reinforcing the very validation-seeking and attention-dependent behaviors it diagnoses. The listener now holds the critical task of deciding for themselves if the means of delivery actually match the elevated message of autonomy.
Ultimately, this tension really just reflects the larger challenge all of us face every day, balancing the genuine benefits of connection and learning against the risks of anxiety and comparison that are detailed throughout this material. It's a constant negotiation every single time we open an app.
A negotiation we hope they now approach with a higher level of cognitive maturity and, hopefully, self-awareness. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe, turn on the notification bell, like, and leave a comment to support the channel.